League history, Myles Garrett's season is over. The Browns star has been suspended for the final 6 regular season games and any potential postseason play. And the suspension for the former #1 pick overall is indefinite after hitting Mason Rudolph in the head with the Steelers' own helmet. As it stands, it's the second longest suspension for an on-field incident in league history. And Steelers Pro Bowl lineman Marquise Pouncey will be suspended for 3 games for his role, which included punching and kicking Garrett in the head after Garrett swung that helmet. And Browns defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi was suspended 1 game for shoving Rudolph in the back shortly after Garrett hit Rudolph in the head with the helmet. Both teams will be fined $250,000. Rudolph was not suspended, though, for his role in the fight, but the league says they would still hand out more punishments, which would result in more fines. Garrett issuing a statement this afternoon saying, quote, "Last night, I made a terrible mistake. I lost my cool, and what I did was selfish and unacceptable. I know that we are all responsible for our actions, and I can only prove my true character through my actions moving forward. I want to apologize to Mason Rudolph, my teammates, our entire organization, our fans, and to the NFL. I know I have to be accountable for what happened, learn from my mistake, and I fully intend to do so." Jeremy Fowler was on the sidelines last night, and he witnessed what happened. He has much more in the aftermath in Cleveland today.
Myles Garrett went on a remorse tour at Browns headquarters Friday. He met with Browns coach Freddie Kitchens in his office. He spoke with players in the building, telling them he let them down and it won't happen again. He crafted a statement apologizing to everyone, including Mason Rudolph. From every corner of the building, Garrett got support, but also a blunt message.
Myles and I visited for a long time this morning, and on a personal level, that's what I want for Myles, is to understand that it's the ball's in his court on how he responds to this. It's up to him on showing people and showing the National Football League that that's not who he is.
Garrett's first step is appealing the suspension. The Browns are not overly confident he'll win the appeal, but they are confident he can avoid missing games in 2020 with good behavior in the coming months. Meanwhile, the Browns try to stay unified during a trying 4-6 season.
Have there been distractions? Yeah, and it's something that you kind of deal with on every team. It's not always open to the public. It's not always out there in every situation, but things happen throughout the season. Do we wish there was less of them? Of course. You wish you had a smooth sailing season with no ups or downs, and I think it's how we respond to them.
From Baker Mayfield's dimes on the run to Odell Beckham Jr.'s yawns in the end zone, the Browns showed promise Thursday night. If Garrett is getting out of the way, the Browns need to get out of theirs. From Berea, Ohio, Jeremy Fowler, ESPN.
All right, now let's switch to Adam Schefter. So this is a dramatic, still a little vague, all of this year, maybe some of next. Does this get reduced? Ultimately, how many do you think he serves?
Well, Keith, I think that's why the NFL made the announcement as swiftly as it did this morning, while giving itself flexibility. It could see how Myles Garrett reacts. It could see what he says in his meeting with Commissioner Goodell at some point this offseason. They don't have to make that decision the day after the incident happened, when emotions are running high. They can wait, take their time, see how Myles Garrett handles it, and then make a decision over time. And I think that's why the league came down and said, you're done this season, and it could carry into next season, depending on how everything goes.
Yeah, I don't want to mess with everybody in agreement here, unanimity about this, given that they all have pitchforks and torches on this subject. But is the other option, was that considered, give it a day to let everybody cool down a little bit?
I think the league didn't want to do that, Keith. I think the moment this happened, you saw how swiftly it was going back. Earlier this year, when the league doled out the stiffest on-field penalty that we've ever seen to Vontaze Burfict, it came the next morning right after also. There's no need to wait. When you see the tape and you have the facts in front of you, this is a story that's on the lead of Good Morning America. The NFL is not going to wait and let everybody talk about how the league is waiting. The league is going to try to seize the narrative and show that it's being proactive, which is exactly what it did today, Keith.
Well, if it's on Good Morning America, I understand. Okay. Later on SportsCenter, we'll go back to the last helmet swinging incident in the NFL, which was way worse. The punishment was way less. And Adam, we'll be back with you later on these breaking Colin Kaepernick stories, which are amazing. Many thanks. As I said, the blowback against Garrett is so universal, even the Browns owners joined it. The D and Jimmy Haslam statement in part, we sincerely apologize to Mason Rudolph and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Myles Garrett has been a good teammate and member of our organization and community for the last 3 years, but his actions last night were completely unacceptable. We understand the consequences from the league for his actions. As to players around the league,
these things, they happen so quick. It's an emotional game, so people play with emotion, and it's a physical sport, so just try to do the best you can do.
What was your reaction when you saw it? That happens. My reaction. Oh my God.
I mean, right when it happened, I knew that was gonna happen. Like, oh yeah, he's done for the year. Soon it happened, it's like, bro, you can't. It's not even the fact that he hits him over his helmet, but it's like he like reaching over people to do it. You know, it's like, yeah, that's just too far. Entirely too far. Unprofessional for real.
If that happened to Carson, how would you have reacted? Probably done the same Kelsey did. I mean, what are you supposed to do? If you don't do anything, it's not going to look good.
Two-time Super Bowl champ Damian Woody joining us now. We just heard reactions from around the league the day after last night. You were on SVP, and you called the actions from Garrett assault. Having some time to think about it, what do you think of the suspensions handed out today?
I think it was fair. I mean, considering that, I always said with the actions that Garrett did, it wasn't part of a football play. Literally, he took off a man's helmet and used it as a weapon. And the league, like Adam said, wanted to seize the narrative. This was on national television, and this was going to be a big story all day today, which it was. So the league, came about this swiftly. So I agree with the suspension of Myles Garrett and everyone else in this whole thing. I understand with Marquise Pouncey, I would have probably done the same thing, but this is like the letter of the law type of deal.
The same behavior that Pouncey did, right?
Yes, yeah, the same thing, because you want to protect your quarterback. But, I mean, rules are rules. You go out there and you're kicking a guy and punching a guy, the league is going to, come down with some type of suspension.
All right, those are the 3 players involved that were suspended. What are your thoughts about the league's decision to not suspend Mason Rudolph, who was involved in this?
Well, I think he deserves to be suspended as well because he was trying to take off another man's helmet. That's one thing about, when you're in the heat of the moment and the emotions, or this is an emotional sport, and you're trying to take off another man's helmet, you're clearly escalating something in that particular moment. So I don't think he should be absolved from being having some type of suspension or punishment as well.
And that means he could still play for the Steelers as they face the Browns in a couple games from now. We'll see how this plays out. Thank you, Damian. Of course, much more on this and how this impacts the Browns, the impact of losing Garrett, and how it's going to affect the rest of the season. Look at the numbers. Since entering the league as the #1 overall pick in 2017, Garrett has 30.5 sacks, tied for 4th in the league. And all day on Garrett swinging Mason Rudolph's helmet and hitting the Steelers quarterback in the head.
There's no place for fighting in this game, whether it's at practice, inter-squad practices, in games. There's just no place for it. We don't condone it. I know both those coaches very well. They don't condone it. It's a shame it happened. It's a very heated rivalry, but for it to end at the end of a game like that, it was a shame.
Fundamentally, I told players what we should do in those situations, how we should handle them, and I think they've done a good job of it. We have a lot of good players, a lot of unselfish players, so I think that's really the key to it.
Meanwhile, Mason Rudolph's agent, Tim Younger, isn't ruling out any legal options. In a text to ESPN's Brooke Pryor, he said, quote, "I am gathering all information and no options have been removed from the table." Senior writer Jason Reed and legal analyst Ryan Smith joining us now on SportsCenter with much more on this story. So, Ryan, the Cleveland police said they're not investigating Myles Garrett because they have not received a complaint from Rudolph. So what are Rudolph's options now?
Well, I think he's got 2 sets of options, criminal and civil. He would have to file a criminal complaint. And I just want to specify this. Just because he would do something like that doesn't mean Myles Garrett would see charges. Authorities would then investigate and decide whether to bring charges. But you look at a situation like this and you say, is it assault? Arguably, because he's knowingly trying to cause harm of someone else. But that doesn't mean that they will go that route. The other option he has is a civil case, maybe under tort law. But the question I have is, would Mason Rudolph want to take that route? Would he want to go through that process of investigation and then also go through the process possibly of filing a civil suit?
And from what I'm hearing right now, Ryan, no. Just texting and talking with players and coaches around the league today, what they all have said is,
look, it was obviously a horrible situation, but to actually have Mason Rudolph take an action that would extend this and bring him to open to some scrutiny as well, they seriously doubt he'll actually would do that.
All right, now, for a singular incident, this is uncharted territory for the NFL. How would you assess, Jason, what the league has done when it comes to punishments and the suspensions so far?
Kevin, clearly the league had no choice with Myles Garrett. I mean, this was a situation that they had to do what they did. But I will say this, for Mason Rudolph to initially get no games, I do think that there's something surrounding that space that we do have to talk about and continue to look at. So from that standpoint, I was a little surprised.
Yeah, and I think it's a question of, you look at this even from a court perspective or a legal perspective, prosecutors, if they were to look at this case, they're going to look at all the circumstances around it, not just the hit, but what happened before it. Why did this happen? You think about a situation like this, it's a little unprecedented with the NFL. We've seen cases in sports where people have been hit by hockey sticks, where there's been issues in baseball. Jose Offerman once attacked someone with a baseball bat. But those were situations where you saw a serious injury. You don't have that here, and I wonder if in a case like this, a prosecutor will say, I don't want to get involved. But if somebody wants to make their name off of something and say, hey, this looks like an injustice, I need to pursue it, it always could happen.
But for the people in the NFL who are involved in the situation, probably best to just move on right now.
Jason, Ryan, thank you so much. Much more in the story as it continues. Then, just a week later, Garrett fined $42K for 2 separate hits on Jets quarterback Trevor Siemian. Garrett penalized 15 yards for each roughing the passer call during the game. The second hit ending Siemian's season with an ugly-looking broken leg. And then last night, the hit everybody heard, felt, and talked about today. Taking the helmet from Mason Rudolph and then hitting him in the head in the closing seconds of the game. Again, suspended indefinitely by the league. He will miss the rest of the regular season and if the Browns make the playoffs. And Garrett issuing this statement today, quote, last night I made a terrible mistake. I lost my cool and what I did was selfish and unacceptable. I know that we all are responsible for our actions and I can only provide my true character through my actions moving forward. I want to apologize to Mason Rudolph, my teammates, our entire organization, our fans, and to the NFL. I know I have to be accountable for what happened, learn from my mistake, and I fully intend to do so. Browns head coach Freddie Kitchens today, after speaking to Garrett this morning, we'll get that commentary coming up in a matter of minutes. Reporter Jeremy Fowler joining us now from the Browns facility. Jeremy, you were on the sidelines as this was happening last night. What did you see?
Kevin, the whole thing was surreal. The first thing I saw was Myles Garrett's movie screen-sized back, and he was on top of Mason Rudolph, and it looked like he was almost punching him. It was the craziest thing to try to figure out because next thing you know, he's up, Rudolph's up, bodies are flying, and then the hammer comes down, the helmet. And after that, really all I could see were Browns players because they were in my sight, but they were doing things like inciting the crowd. Odell Beckham's jumping up and down. Players are fired up. You know, they're probably trying to ride for their teammate, Myles Garrett, but it probably wasn't the best look for the Browns sideline.
All right, this team is coming off their biggest win of the season. So in the aftermath of what happened, what was it like inside that Browns locker room?
Well, it felt like a loss, Kevin. I mean, usually in a winning locker room, and you've been there, there's high-fiving, there's music playing, guys are pumped. And it was scarce. It was quiet. There were minimal high fives going on, and so you're trying to figure it out. And there was a telling quote from Pro Bowl guard Joe Bitonio, who spoke to the team in the locker room, and he said he did so because it was an emotional game, and he said there were emotional things being said after the game. And so he wanted to remind his team that they're one unit, one family, pulling in the right direction. Now, that's a great message, but not one you usually hear after you've won 2 straight games. So the whole situation was very odd.
Yeah, the Browns have the Dolphins next. Then they face the Steelers once again. Jeremy Fowler reporting from Cleveland.
The developing story, the Colin Kaepernick workout is not only still scheduled, it's crowded. He is now near Flowery Branch, Georgia. Earlier today, public statements and ESPN reporting had it at about 14 teams we believe were planning to attend the one-man combine, including the Cowboys. The number has grown since, but earlier today, Jerry Jones said no, Dallas is not attending.
We're not going to have anybody there. We'll basically, those are taped, and we'll look at the tape if we need information there. We really like where we are with our quarterbacks. We've got some very young quarterbacks, and that's the way to, we think, to bring anything up behind Dak is to do it with young ones like we're doing. So we won't be there.
So back with Adam Schefter, Cowboys going, Cowboys not going, everybody going?
Well, Keith, Jerry Jones initially said the Cowboys weren't going, and later in the day, the organization reversed course and decided to send a representative to the workout. And the truth of the matter is, every team is going to get video of the workout anyway. So whether they're represented in person or not, they can watch the video, they can see the throws, they can watch the interviews and hear Colin Kaepernick's answers and make a determination about whether it would be a good move for that particular team, whether it's Dallas or anybody else, to go sign the man that's been exiled for 2 years and 8 months.
So just say the number that you know of to this point. Just say it aloud so we can all hear it again.
It is over 24 teams right now. My guess is that when all is said and done, there'll be 26, 27 teams there on Saturday at the Falcons complex watching Colin Kaepernick throw the football, Keith.